All right, let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on staffing and recruiting challenges in AR. I know a topic that many of us are constantly challenged with and curious about. Let me get through. By way of introduction, my name is Andrew Hsu. I am a co-founder and managing partner here at Spotlight Analyst Relations. Today, joining me is Christina Neal, director of our Spotlight Academy.
Hello, everyone.
Spotlight Academy is the business unit inside Spotlight that has the responsibility for capturing all the different tools and techniques that we develop in servicing our clients, codifying that and improving on that, and then training our internal staff as well as some of our clients on that methodology. So that's the Academy. Quick introduction to Spotlight Analyst Relations, and I see a lot of names on here that are familiar faces. Forgive me for doing this again, but Spotlight, we are an analyst relations agency headquartered here in Kansas City. Been in the business for a little bit over 7.5 years. There are just over 40 of us, and we're currently running 70 concurrent AR programs with our clients or for our clients. So let's talk about this topic of staffing and recruiting, right? It is a shared challenge. This idea of how do we find the help we need to do all the work we have. Now, why this challenge? It's something that we've been hearing over and over and over again. It seems like something that we hear discussed at the different industry events that we go to. We hear rumblings within our clients. Both Christina and I had an opportunity to go down to the KCG event in April, and we had some fantastic conversations there as well. There seems to be a lot of folks trying to answer the question, what is our demand? What is my need? Is my need the same as everybody else's need? Are the solutions the same as everybody else's solutions? Are we all suffering from the same challenges or different challenges? How are we finding those folks? How are we finding the talent? How are we breaking up the work? How are we doing all the different analyst relations that we are challenged to do? So in the spirit of answering that question, put our heads together here at Spotlight and said, let's go do a little bit of a survey, right? Let's go ask the community a few questions, bring that back to to all of us, right? And see what we find, to bring back the different findings and see if there's something interesting things that we have in the data. So if you would be so kind, I'd love to just get a sense for how many of you were able to see our staffing and recruiting survey come out in July. That's when you have seen it, and did have an opportunity to take that survey. I'm just watching it come up. No, a lot of you have had a chance to take it. So far, we're looking at 75%, if you wouldn't mind. Perfect. So it looks like a lot of you were able to take it. So some of the results here should sound familiar. For those of you who have not, I'll just have Christina, who is going to be reading the data out to us, be a little descriptive of what we're asking and why we were asking it. So before we put out the survey, we had a few hypotheses and curiosities, right? So things that we thought might happen. First question, obviously, is how budget constrained are we really, right? How many of us are hiring? It'd just be interesting to get a sense for who's out there. Do we feel like we have the resources that we need? Do we feel like that we are able to open up those recs? Are we struggling to find talent? And that was a hypothesis that we were struggling to find talent, but the question really is, that's not uniform, right? Are we struggling to find, is it the right experience level that we're struggling with? Is it the right price, or is it in the right geographies that we're struggling with? So, but all of those are they're interrelated, but slightly different challenges. We didn't quite know what to expect here. Are we hiring AR talent to execute more of our existing AR activities, or are we hiring talent to solve net new activities? The reason why we asked this question is we were really interested about all the different, the cacophony of noise that was happening around Peer Insights and other crowdsourced sort of review sites. We wanted to get a sense of, are we hiring people to stand beside us and do the same things that we're doing, right, just to tackle more of the challenge? Or are we starting to look at different challenges and hiring to solve those? And then where were we looking, right? Were we looking at experienced full-time only, right? Going out there and finding some of our peers that have been doing this for a while and grabbing them from industry? Are we retasking internal talent, trying to find other folks that are really great inside our firm and making them analyst relations folks? Or are we open to third-party help? So that's sort of one of the different questions that we had, right? How are people solving this problem? Now, before we go into the data, and Christina's going to share some of the who responded, I just want to caveat this a little bit. So the N number, the number of people who responded during our July open timeframe was 41. Now, what does that tell us? We would have loved that to have been higher, right? That number is less of a statistically relevant data set that allows us to draw detailed questions, but more like a wider focus group that gives us directional guidance on where we're going. So the objective here that hopefully as we you'll hear what we would like to do is open this up again later on in this year, maybe and grab more and more data, right? And I would love to hear your ideas for how we might be able to increase our N number, grab more folks to fill it out so we can become more insightful. But I just want to make sure that as we go through the data, the number of people that responded is very, very important to determine what kind of conclusions we can draw.
Absolutely. And a side note there, everyone who took the survey and will take the survey when it reopens will receive a report detailing all of the findings, of which time we'll have enough sample to really make some of those statistically significant findings.
That's right. That's right. But what we wanted to do today was just share early directional things so we can all see what came back early.
Absolutely. Sneak peek findings are always valuable. So before we actually go into the findings, I think it's really important to level set on the demographic information so we have a better understanding of who provided us with this insight. So if we look across revenue, tenure, and team size, great news that we have a pretty broad distribution actually. So of the 41 respondents who spent the time answering the survey, 50% came from companies with more than $1 billion in revenue, followed then by 40% in the middle tier at 50 million to $1 billion. Now we undersampled slightly to some degree the smaller shops, but still have them represented. When looking at tenure, I was very pleased to see a pretty equal distribution across years of experience. And then when looking at team size, a majority of the respondents were either teams of 1 or teams of 2 to 5. But we did get some responses from some of those larger teams, even as large as 15 plus AR pros. We also asked the question around industries. As you can imagine, the majority of the responses are in the computer software space. No surprise there, but we did have some other categories pop up. I think where the surprise came to me is when we looked at the amount of time spent on AR. So we asked what percentage of time the respondent dedicates to AR, and you can see the responses here are bookended. We actually had roughly 35% of the respondents say they're fully dedicated to the practice as their full-time role. The largest group of respondents, though, actually comes from those that dabble in AR. They dedicated less than 25% of the time. So naturally, the next question then is to figure out what roles these respondents are in. So here, when looking at the roles, it was great to see that all roles were represented. We had a great turnout of directors who have AR practitioners report to them. I actually think the surprising thing here was to see that we did have a few executives take the survey. Now, of course, with Andrew saying we're going to be reopening it, the goal over time is to be able to cut the data by role once we increase responses to see if we're learning what and extrapolating things that can help you in your specific role and your specific challenges grow your own teams. And then the last demographic question we explored was the geographic location of the AR team. We wanted to see if there were trends specific to location. So looking across the 41 respondents, we had a wide swath of locations represented. And even though mostly were focused in the US, we actually did have 4 international responses. So again, something we'd like to explore further by segmenting the data once we bolster the sample. But I think the demographic data here is really important before we jump into the results to just help set the stage for the broad distribution and the sampling so you can be more relatable to the findings we're going to share. So let's explore. What did we actually find based on our curiosities that we had coming through? So one of the first questions we asked is around staffing and growth plans. Naturally, we wanted to know if teams are currently understaffed, appropriately staffed, or overstaffed. As you can probably guess, we didn't have anyone say they were overstaffed, but we did see that 56% of respondents felt that they were understaffed given their current workloads. Next, what we wanted to explore were what were the teams planning to do about it? Were they looking to grow their team over the next year? So we asked, how many people do you anticipate on your team for next year? The same headcount, more headcount, or fewer headcount? And we see that actually only 32% of respondents indicated that they plan to increase their headcount. So this was interesting because there were a few that actually said they plan to decrease their headcount. But if we think about those who are planning to add on, that 24% discrepancy between feeling understaffed and actually being able to do something about it, it means maybe, I'd love to explore this, is it mean that we're not great at selling and the need for more AR resources? If we wanted to further fragment that challenge of looking at those that want to add headcount, only 58% are currently hiring, which equates to only 8 companies hiring for 9 open positions, even though 20 respondents said they could use more staff. So does that mean we aren't quite ready yet to start the process, or we just don't have the current headcount listed? Definitely things that are interesting that we can think about. When looking at the makeup of respondents that are looking to add more headcount, I think it's no surprise here, the rich are getting richer, right? It's the bigger companies that are looking to hire, and it's the bigger teams that are getting even bigger. Now, this ratio surprised me, as I would have thought it's the solo AR practitioners that would be able to build out their teams, that need to build out their teams. But it's really the big companies that are the ones getting the budget, getting the allocation, are the ones able to build out those teams. So does that mean they're better at articulating the value? So those are things we're going to also explore. But lastly, looking at time allocation. It's the people that are spending nearly their full day on AR that are looking to extend their support. To me, it sounds like the people who are working part-time in AR who could really use the help just aren't getting the additional resources necessary to feel appropriately staffed. So that led us down the path of wanting to explore what's necessary to justify adding more headcount for the AR effort. So how are we justifying hiring more support? So we asked the question, if you had to choose, what's the one thing your program could do that would get you the budget you need to grow your headcount? Overwhelmingly, we are left justified here. 68% of respondents indicated they need to prove more attributable leads to AR. So that's directly tying AR to revenue and sales impact. Now, this has been the age-old challenge in AR, right? This is not a huge surprise. It's actually something we've covered in other webinars. Unfortunately, there's no magic bullet to show those attributable leads, but integrating and activating results across the business has been very successful in showing that AR impact. We actually just did a webinar on that. So if you would like to watch that, head over to our new website. There's a resource section where you can watch that webinar for free. And then of course, if you have any questions, we would love to help answer that because we know that that is a challenge out there. But if we go back to the data, I think on this slide, the thing that's most interesting is that being a leader in my next evaluation report only accounts for 5% of the respondents saying that that would increase their budget to be able to get the help they need. So all this time working towards and worrying about this evaluation report, while valuable to the business, actually isn't tied to the budget that enables support. So I think that's really fascinating. Next, we were curious about what roles are being sought after. This question was actually a select all that apply, and it was fascinating to see that several respondents selected multiple responses, even though they had only one position open. They selected either both manager and associate level or manager and director. So does that mean they aren't 100% sure exactly what they need? Are they generalists open to anything just based on what they can find? But when we do look across the full total, the role that is most sought after is the manager practitioner role. An important question we wanted to explore is where are they looking when they hire? So this data shows that actually the majority are looking for external hires. It was really interesting to see that only one person is looking internally. Now here at Spotlight, we've seen some very successful AR pros come from elsewhere in the company, namely product teams, strategy, or either other comms positions. With the right training, they were able to quickly train and transition into the AR role and were able to show quick wins and momentum since in most cases, they were already ingratiated with the leadership, the inner workings of the organization. So by looking internally, it really extends and expands the hiring pool. So I thought it was interesting to see that that number was so low. All right, so we looked at who is looking, what role they're looking for, where they're looking, but what we haven't explored yet is what they actually hope the new hires will be able to do. So we asked the respondents, what responsibilities are you looking for your new hires to take on? It was interesting to see that the job responsibilities here are actually fairly distributed. Now, this was also a select all that apply, and it was fascinating to see that the majority of respondents wanted new hires to do all three options. So they need a lot. Low specificity and need could really mean that we're desperately need help in any way we can. It also could be that we're so understaffed that we're needing to be genericized just to kind of catch up, and then we can be more specific. Now, we thought it was interesting here because there were a few responses that selected only one or two options. However, the only option that was not selected as a standalone was initiating net new AR activities like peer insights, customer references, competitive intelligence. It was the only option that was not selected. So this actually disproved our original hypothesis. We were anticipating some trend around hiring for these things, given just the sheer amount of buzz lately, but we just didn't see evidence of that. So again, it may indicate that these net new activities are seen as value add, but not necessity. Next, we wanted to explore where challenges exist in finding new hires. So we asked each respondent to answer on a scale of agree to disagree across each dimension listed here. And this tells us what degree of difficulty or ease it is to find hires across attributes like experience. Are candidates not experienced enough? Are they too experienced? What about price? Are they easy to find at the right price? Geography, are they based where the jobs are located? And when looking at this data in this chart, we actually see that finding people at the right experience level and the geography pop out as the most difficult to find. Honestly, we were expecting to see people struggle finding the right talent at the right price, but so far directionally, price does not seem to be the case or the barrier. And then lastly, what we wanted to explore was current and target state for actually who does the work and who will do the work. So we asked respondents what % of their current staff is outsourced to an agency. What we discovered is most of you do your work internally, so about 74% of you don't outsource any of your AR efforts. But when asked a follow-up question on if they would be open to third-party help, 59% said yes. In fact, it's proven out when looking at those current open positions we talked about, since 4 of the 8 are actually looking at agency support. So this is a really interesting stat, especially for us here at Spotlight, as this could indicate that there's a new delivery approach that's being considered that may not have been thought about before. It could also mean they're open to the idea, but maybe further exploration is needed to understand working models. But overall, I read this as people are looking at adjusting their current workflows to see if there's efficiency or effectiveness alternatives to incorporate to really evolve their practice.
Right. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, so sort of interesting findings, right? Obviously, we have to take it with our end number in mind, and we have to understand like who's hiring and how many people are hiring in order to get the trends. But I thought the data was directional and sort of interesting. So if we take a look at some of these recommendations that come out of this, and maybe they're observations, I didn't know how strong I could be on this. But it's clear that we need to keep working on the revenue attribution challenge, right? This is a constant challenge for us and as analyst relations pros. There are tools and techniques that come into play. And you know, as an agency where we essentially price what people ask us to do, this is an interesting topic. Attribution and measurement takes money and time. And almost everybody who hires us, when asked the question, can you do the attribution challenge? Can you help me answer this question? They inevitably say, I would rather you do more analyst relations and spend less time on attribution, which I find to be an interesting thing that maybe many of you are struggling with as well. Like Christina says, we have great topics and material on this. We have some webinars we've done in the past with other tools and techniques, but ultimately there is no silver bullet. This is hard work. It requires you put into multiple programs. It requires a significant amount of integration with the rest of the business. Another thing is we have to reinvent how we do work to leverage entry-level talent, right? So if it's hard to find the right talent and experience level in the right marketplace and geography, but we don't see the same challenge in getting entry-level talent. Now, of course, they can't do the same jobs, right, that your experienced AR pro can. Maybe they don't have the political wherewithal to win the internal resources. Maybe they don't have the relationship building experience on the analyst side. Maybe they're less knowledgeable regarding AR techniques and tools. But I think what we need to do is reinvent how we can leverage this entry-level talent, right? How do we change the workflow? You know, every time I talk to a really experienced team lead running AR, it's not just how do I get more people, it's how do I reinvent the work, right? How do I reinvent my workflows? How do I leverage my tools? How do I get better output? And I think that leveraging entry-level talent is one way to do that. We have to lean on training to bring capable internal talent into our craft, right? You know, just that idea that we're not really looking internally, and maybe it's afraid to rob Peter to pay Paul. Maybe like this retasking of internal talent into AR is a political fight that we're unwilling to fight. But there's so many people inside your organizations that desire a different challenge, right? They want to tackle something new. As Christina mentioned, they have talents, they have capabilities, they have relationships, they know your business. This might be a great under-leveraged source for folks that we can bring into our world. And then finally, you know, if we can't hire, we'll be challenged to be more efficient and effective. You know, you take a look at some of those solo hires in the data that talked about people who are like doing the execution on their own. They're not getting any more resources. This means from an effectiveness perspective, you can have to lean on tools, right? So, you know, if you take a look at, aforementioned, it went down the KCG and talked to those guys. They have tools. You take a look at Forrester's AR Council, there's a significant amount of resources there. The IIAR, a wonderful source of resource for best practices. You can talk to folks there. Spotlight, we have a resources page. There are plenty of places to go get inspired by different ways to be more effective. And then on the efficiency side, I think comes down to not only changing our workflows and looking at that stuff, but a lot of it's down to tooling, right? So being clear about the tools that you leverage, being uniform about the tools that you leverage. You know, it's really, really hard if you're constantly working in a fragmented environment and you're constantly trying to invent new tools to do your job. So I'd like to just open up to our community here, right? I'd like to think of this as a community-owned study. You know, even though Christina, Lauren, and I have been on the Spotlight side have been challenging and pushing this thing forward, we've been trying to publicize this and grab this data. I think this data belongs to all of us. I'd be interested in hearing, and if you have a moment, type into the chat box here. Are there any specific findings that surprise you? Are there things that don't surprise you, right? Does this make sense? Are there any other questions you want answered relating to hiring and recruiting? Did we miss something? Obviously, we knew that we couldn't ask it like 100-point question, right? Questionnaire, and otherwise we wouldn't get respondents. But is there something else that you want to dive in deeper? Do you have any ideas on how to bolster year-over-year responses? Love to get your point of view too, right? Can we leverage other communities? Can we leverage each of our, can we make this a grassroots effort? And how do we get more respondents this year, right? And how can I open that up? If you have any sort of ideas for how we can make this study better, both in the questions that it's answering as well as the number of people who respond, please, academy@spotlightar.com. We'd welcome any recommendations. That'd be huge for us. So, yeah, while you guys do a little bit of typing, I thought we'd just do a quick few announcements. Christina, is that right? Okay. Absolutely. So first and foremost, just want to do a little shameless plug. Here in September, the Spotlight Oz platform, our proprietary analyst relations platform is going GA. Some of you guys might have seen it, some of our ads going on and some of our different marketing materials going out. We are so excited that we've gone through our beta program. I know that many of you raised your hands. We weren't able to accept everybody, but it is going GA and it's available for all of September, and we can't wait to show it to you. In the spirit of that, we have a public demo that we want to do. So on Wednesday, September 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern, we wanted to do just a broad demo, right? Invite everybody to come so you can have an opportunity to take a look at our product, right? What does it do? What problem does it solve? You know, how is it different than the other tools that are available in the marketplace? I know that there's some general curiosities, If you're generally curious, this might be a great opportunity to do a low impact session to see what it does. Um, if you're serious about tooling, right, and you really want to ask some questions about what about my historical data? How do I transfer things from here to there? What about this thing that I do that's slightly unique? If you'd like to have a one-on-one session where we talk about specific challenges to your program, please go onto our website and click on the Spotlight Oz link and request a demo. Those one-on-one demos will give us an opportunity to really think through your questions and answer the specific challenges that you have. And final announcement, we have Gartner Symposium coming up. Last year was our first year going down there, and the Sunday before Symposium, we threw a little party at Todd English's Blue Zoo. We just invited all the different AR pros to come join us, and that was fantastic. I mean, it was great to see people. I know that it was a little bit of a family reunion for many of you. We'd like to do that again. So Sunday, October 20th, before the whole entire symposium, if you're going down there, please come join us. Let's grab a few cocktails. Let's hang out, right? We can chat about maybe these hiring challenges. Maybe we can just hang out, right? So please, we'll send an Eventbrite invitation to follow. Love to see you. That would be fantastic.
Great, and we have about 1 minute left.
Yeah.
So we've gotten some great ideas in the chat feature of some of the areas to explore within data coming up. So we'll look through those. But we actually did get a question, which was great, that I think we could cover. It's, if I wanted to go internal, what makes a good internal candidate?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've seen a couple of different folks come through our doors here into the academy. And honestly, we've seen people that didn't come to us for training that were incredibly successful. I'm trying to think about the characteristics, right? I haven't seen a specific trend that says you have to come from product, you have to come from comms. That's not the case. And I don't think deep product expertise is necessary. I think as we look at internal resources, I think we're looking for people with honestly great communication skills, right? Unfortunately, our world is also incredibly fragmented, so detail orientation matters. I think it's about sort of enthusiastic communicators. We don't have to be late in career. I've been successful in training and bringing people up that are maybe 4 or 5 years out, maybe even as much as 10, and then bringing them into our world, right? Teaching them analyst relations. The biggest issue that they have to have is a willingness to rethink this idea that there's a third party. I'm not the one communicating what we do well. I have to communicate to an analyst, now that analysts believe it. So it's sort of an interesting point of view. But those internal resources, really, we've seen some really good success. And I know that many of you, and I've seen the data, right? Like, wait, how did you come to analyst relations? And many of you are like, we were voluntold, or it was a battlefield promotion, or I came to this by accident. Very few of us came out of college saying, I want to be an analyst relations pro. So definitely looking into those characteristics is key.
Great, yeah, and we are actually at time.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully this information, the sneak peek preview, got you excited to kind of see some of those statistical findings later as we bolster survey responses. But if you do have any questions that come out of this, again, you can send it to academy@spotlightar.com. Other than that, we will be sending out a recording of this for you, and we will take all of your suggestions that you have. We really appreciate you joining and taking the time today.
And thank you again. I know that it is valuable time that you have that you're sharing with us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you on a demo soon, another webinar, or in person at the symposium. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.